You're awake after lunch, so that's my job. I believe this is a breakout session on music choice. Am I in the right room? Okay. So, I got several courses where I've got, slides and whatnot. This one I thought, well, I'm not sure exactly what everybody is trying to get out of the course or would like to talk about, so this is going to be a little more informal. We've got more attendees coming. So let me just begin by asking who we have represented here. For example, do we have course directors? Any directors? A lot of directors. All right. Quartet people? Okay. All right. Anybody maybe who is assistant director in your course? Or let's say, or section leader? Section leaders. Okay. All right. Well, these are music people, so I guess we're talking to the right crowd here. Now, are the directors, are you in the director's sequence, and this is a time you have off, or what? Are you in the director's track? Some are and some aren't, but if you are, you have this time off to do breakouts. I have. You have to understand, I'm not from around here, so I don't quite understand this system. So, what do you? Okay. So let's throw things open just a little bit. I wish I could actually. There must be a way. Otherwise, it's going to be constantly. I want that to go away, but I'm going to want it back immediately. Suppose I did this. Yeah. Now I need to turn up the lights. That's a little much. How about that? Okay, I think we're good. Now I may need that. We'll see. Let's plunge right in. I want you to tell me. Selecting music, what are you looking for? What factors determine your choice of music? Does everybody volunteer one thing? Somebody, yes.
Can we look for black people there?
Okay, that's a very important. I'm going to just make a list and then we'll go back and talk. Yes.
Entertaining?
What?
Entertaining.
Entertaining. So now he's talking about will the singer like it, you're talking about will the audience like it.
Yeah.
Two valid things. Yes, sir.
Is it suitable for the chorus or the quartet?
Suitable to the performer.
I was going to say enjoyable for the singers to sing.
Okay, do the singers like it and enjoy it? What category? Yes,
The
yes.
director has to like it as well.
The what?
The
The
director has to
director likes it. Since we have directors in here, I bet that's a popular issue. Yes.
Something that moves me and them.
Okay. So, yeah, that kind of fits in the bailiwick of entertaining to the audience and likable by the performer, but maybe you've introduced another element into it. It moves you somehow. Yes.
Degree of difficulty in the song. Degree of difficulty.
Degree. I was waiting for that. Somebody hadn't thrown that one in. I would have. Degree of difficulty. Yes, sir.
Whether it fits with your existing repertoire.
Ah, needs of the repertoire.
Contestable?
Okay, contestable if that's what you want him. Yes, yes, sir.
Novelty, whether it's going to draw comparisons with previous versions of it,
Okay.
something you can take ownership of.
Right. So maybe variety of song types or whatever, so that not everything sounds the same. Is there a question there? Yeah, go ahead.
Listen to each track's available.
Very good. And we can even back up and say, is the music
Yeah, it's a
available?
music bed.
I'll be right. Okay, anybody else have anything? I think we've got a lot of things covered here.
Who the arranger is.
Who the arranger is? Would that influence your choice?
Yes. Definitely.
Possibly negatively.
Has it been done before?
Yeah.
Has it been done before by the groups that you might want to emulate or stay clear of?
Okay. Who has done that? Okay, good. Got a good list. Anybody, is there anything else? Okay. All right, we'll kind of revisit all of these. Let's go, maybe not in the order that we were given, but let's kind of start maybe at a beginning point. Would be the notion of repertoire, all right? We've got choruses and quartets represented, so let's talk about repertoire. This is something I see a lot of choruses and quartets violating, and that's the notion of just a flow of songs, all right? So that, maybe they do 3 ballads in a row, and you lose the audience. You've just lost them. Too much the same. So, if you're going to get up, your chorus, you put on a show, you're going to sing maybe between when the curtain opens and closes, depending on the nature of the show, or maybe it's a paid performance or something like that. I suppose you somewhere between 5 and 10 songs. What might you want represented there in terms of song types?
Good mix of ballads.
Slow and quick.
Okay, so variation of tempo.
Something like, popular songs. and-
Okay, recognizable.
On the lines of the finish.
Okay, a finale.
Yeah.
And at the other end, an opener.
Feature, something that might feature a section or something.
Okay, so feature.
Solos.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Understand. Okay.
Sentiment.
So, sentiment, so maybe different kinds of emotions represented, a happy song. You don't want to lay too many heavy songs on them. But sort of a variation of emotional tour, sort of. So that there's ups and downs and various types of poignancy by which you can grab the listener.
Are you keeping a theme going through the performance from one song to another? Are they linked in some sort of way?
Okay.
Drags the audience along with you.
Right.
Sorry.
All right. So that might be something that makes a natural sequence. Now it's probably not necessary to have any kind of subject theme, although some performers might choose to do that. But that kind of boxes you in a little bit, right? The minute you say, we're going to sing songs about a flower or something, you put a little fence around yourself. So I think a good approach is to allow yourself for a real variety of songs, but have some sort of natural leading from one to the other. So that may get a little bit out of here into show production, but certainly you might want to think about that in choosing music, how you're going to get from one song to another. It's going to be natural. You don't want to really grab people with an emotionally song about death of a lover or something like that, and then put on a happy face. You just want to be careful about that sequencing. Yeah. So we are definitely going to need to have the curtains open and have something ready to go. Yes? And this is whether you're a quartet or chorus. You probably need in your repertoire at least one song, maybe 2, but at least one that the curtains open, pow, you're going to lay it right on. And most of our choruses probably choose to do that without any emceeing at the beginning. You might have, but be careful about that. Curtain open, wow, let's go with it. So there's that opener. You also will need something that is a closer. If the audience loves you after the closer, in some situations you might need an encore. So you need to have something that you can stand, something that you would not have already sung. If you do a particularly good job, you might be called on to sing an encore. There are 3 pieces that we need: opener, a closer, something that's possibly an encore. Okay, now we've talked about varying tempos. Let's suppose you start off with a big slam bang intro. Let's get some ideas. What might be a good choice for a second song? Type song. Let's start with the song type.
Swing numbers.
Okay. Okay. Swing number is a very popular choice. Not saying it's the only choice. In fact, no rules that we make are the only choice. Generally, you wouldn't start with a poignant ballad, and yet maybe someone can make that successful. So we won't make a rule that says you can't, but generally you wouldn't. And generally that second song might be a swing song, just because if you've really, sung a power song to begin with, you need something easy. And yet the easy thing, you need a little bit of time to get on the good side of the crowd. So it might be better to sing that easy swing tempo second, rather than going to something that really is a gut-wrenching ballad kind of thing. That probably needs to be third. So if you're going to sing something that is a very poignant ballad, a la barbershop contest power ballad, okay, or even something that's not power ballad, not a contest, this is the moment, music of the night, something that's really sweeping. The second, or let's say third or fourth position into the show might be a good place for that. Okay, so you got that. So you got a ballad or poignant song that is not a tempo song. Somebody mentioned novelty, just some contrast. What are the different kinds of ways you can introduce something in your package that has some novelty to it? Okay, it can be a comedy song.
Something that introduces.
It could be something that's accompanied. All right. Let me just back up a minute. If you're going to do comedy, and I'm not a comedian, so if you're going to ask me to clarify this, I'm going to send you to someone else who knows comedy. If you're going to do something funny, it should be funny. And I say that in all seriousness, because in our genre, I see a lot of attempts at comedy. Comedy is not easy. You've got a person, a man or woman in your chorus who thinks they know how to write comedy. And they say, oh, I've got a funny parody to such a song, let's do that. And it's really not all that funny. And you'll know it. You know something's not funny very easily. Nobody laughs. Or at the best, you get a few smattering of chuckles out there. That's not good enough. If your song is going to be funny, it needs to be funny. And that's not just one gag at the beginning or at the end. You need to keep it going for a while. So there's my little homily about comedy. If you're going to do that, make sure you know what you're doing. And I offer that as a person who does not. I would never attempt to write it, because I'm not funny, and I wouldn't know how to write it. So make sure that that works. Okay, let's go on. You could have something that was mentioned, what did you say, Joe?
Accompaniment.
Something that has accompaniment. Now, barbershop is primarily an a cappella style, but we all, at some point, probably have something that's accompanied by a piano, a guitar. My chorus likes to use percussion, by the way. A lot of a cappella has vocal percussion. And even though I admire people that can do that very well, that keeps it, quote, a cappella, I've never really thought that made a lot of sense, because why not just get the drum out there? It's got the same sounds. I see no reason to use a human voice to do what the drum can do better. So we actually have some songs, like one swing tune, big band song called Stompin' to the Savoy that we do, and we bring out the drummer. It's a great contrast, and it just adds to the performance entirely. What other kinds of things can you do for novelty? Yes.
Soloist.
A soloist.
Quartet.
So let's say a soloist or a featured group. It could be a quartet, or sometimes two people. So something that features a smaller, let's say smaller ensemble, features a smaller ensemble. But it also includes the chorus. So the chorus is oohing behind the solo. A few years ago I did an arrangement of, some of you may have seen the ambassadors do Higher and Higher. We happen to have two good quartets, Vocal Spectrum and Crossroads, at a lot of our shows. And so it features both quartets and the chorus. And we did that thinking we were going to sing it in Philadelphia when we came back as past champions 3 years ago, and we've never been able to drop it. Our audience absolutely won't let us drop the song. And by the way, there's a good symptom that something is working. If your audience won't let you stop singing it, that's a pretty good indication you probably ought to hang on to it. Okay.
I'm using choreography.
I'm using choreography, yes. Probably your chorus does not have choreography to every song. I know mine doesn't. So yes, if you've got something that's choreographed. Now it's kind of neat to have that maybe at the front end too. But what may not be satisfying is if your opener is really choreographed and then you never again do choreography for the rest of the performance. That's probably not a good idea. It's sort of like false advertising. They're going to say, oh wow, this is what this is going to be all about, and then it never happens again. So if you're going to open with it, maybe you should close with it or use it at least once again. And the other option is to have the choreography be in your finale, or it can be in the middle somewhere. But just be aware of the fact that once you've introduced something, you may have set up an expectation that that's the way it's going to be. So keep that in mind with all of your choices, all right? So any other kind of special novelty thing?
Using props.
Props, absolutely. Making it a funny little, I keep thinking of my own course experience. We do short people. We do short people a la the King Singers, and we make fun of Jim Henry. So, you know, it's, if you've got something like that that can just make people giggle based on your performers and your chorus, possibly poking fun at you, the director, that's always a good thing. Okay. Somebody mentioned recognizable songs. I don't think it's absolutely necessary, but I think it really is good. If you sing a whole program full of songs that nobody in the audience has ever heard, it can be a hard sell. So somewhere along the line, this is music that they know. All right. Any other types of songs you might consider putting in? Yes?
Modern or old-fashioned?
There you go. New songs or old songs. Our contest ballads tend to be older songs, although that's not so much true anymore. I think you can actually sell a contest ballad that nobody knows if you do it once. If you do it once, you can stand up there and sing time after time. Maybe nobody in the house knows that song, but you do a great job of it, they're going to love it. But if you follow that by, Who Will Take My Place When I'm Gone, and that by another ballad, you've lost it. I don't care how well you sing. So do that once, and let's move on and get something that there's tempo. Sure, okay. Now, another thing in terms of, and this relates to old and new, sometimes groups choose to sing something that's a little outside the barbershop genre, and I'm not talking about using a soloist or whatever. I'm talking about a little more in the sense of using an arrangement by the King Singers or a choral arrangement, a choral version of What Shall We Do with the Drunken Sailor or Shenandoah or something like that, that pulls you outside the barbershop idiom for just briefly. I think that can be effective too. I think if you're billed as a barbershop chorus, the meat and guts should be umbrella barbershop, not necessarily contest barbershop. But for the most part, 4-part consonant harmony. But some experiment outside, if your chorus does it well, that certainly allows some variety too. Another thing is, especially with our choruses, a lot of arrangers are throwing out a few places that have 5- and 6-part chords. I do it a lot arranging for my chorus because we've got a big chorus. If you've got a big enough chorus that you can handle that, you want to make sure you've got good section unity when the parts divide. You've got that to worry about, but that's another way you create a little bit more variety. Okay? Any other thoughts about just the variety of songs in the repertoire? Okay? Yeah.
Genres, spiritual, gospel.
Absolutely. Spirituals and gospels, and by the way, that's very traditional for barbershop to use religious music of some type. Gospel, something that's patriotic, correct, do it. Okay. I would say that, though, the most important thing is to think through the sequence of songs. And think through it as an audience member. Don't think through it as a chorus member, because you know the music. But just try to step outside and say, okay, I'm in the audience, and this sequence gets thrown at me. How good does it feel? It needs to feel good as we progress from song to song. And each song needs to be fresh, and each one gives us a feeling of contrast from what's preceded it. The enemy of good, and I talk about this in arranging. You come in my arranging thing later, I guess that's tomorrow. You'll hear this a lot. The enemy of any kind of good music and really good entertainment is just too much sameness. Everything just begins to sound alike. It doesn't matter how good a quartet is, really. If they sing it absolutely perfectly, you can admire their wonderful consonants for about 20 seconds. And if they're not doing anything with the music, after a while, you say, okay, they're good. I'm ready for the next quartet. So making sure that things flow is very, very important in arranging, in general, and entertainment in general. Okay, let's since we only have an hour, I think that was a very, very important thing to talk about. Let's talk about suitability to perform. All right, you're a director, you're choosing music. Let's think about suitability. What would you, what considerations are there?
Range.
Range, all right. That's at the top of the list.
Average age of the chorus?
Right, which may have something to do with range, but okay. Let's stick with range for a minute, and then we'll move on to some other things. One thing you can do is, since you know your chorus, you know your quartet, is you know what they can handle, and you want to be realistic about the range. Different groups, and I'm not talking about the difference between an A level and a C level group. Different groups that lie within the same basic level have different strengths and different weaknesses. So you may have a wonderful lead section that can float very nicely in their head voice. And that may allow you to say, okay, if the song floats up around G, A flat, that's wonderful. That's going to highlight our strength. So you might gravitate towards that kind of song. Now, if you've got an older chorus and heavier voices, or even good voices, but they just don't do that, you know what I mean? You avoid those choices. Keep the leads down below the F level. Or if you're a women's chorus, F translates to about, what, B natural or something. So if you're a women's chorus, you probably wouldn't want to let those leads soar up to a D unless you know they're good at it. All right? Let's think about the basses. That's a constraint too. There's a lot of songs, I'm talking men's arrangements now, that really need that F. You know, my old arrangement, Old St. Louis, just to mention something that those who've been around in the barbershop. The bass better be able to sing an F. You can put it up a half, but I wouldn't put it up a step. So can the basses handle that? Now here's where a lot of the courses with older voices, they can handle that just fine. Older voices tend to get lower, and so a lot of courses that have, whoa, no problem with the basses on an F. I don't want my leads on a G up there. The bass on an F, it's no problem. So women, now, and this, by the way, is a constraint for women's, even more so than men's. A lot of transposed arrangements don't work so well for women, for that very reason. The F translates really to about a B natural. So how many women's choruses how many would you put your basses on a B for a good part of the song? Probably not. Okay, so there you want to keep the basses probably above C, I would say. And it's really nice if they can maybe not get down below E flat or something. Okay, so picking music, first thing you might want to do is just look at it. You can do a quick scan and see how high that lead line goes, see how low that bass line goes. What are other things with range?
Intervals.
Intervals, yes. Is it jumpy? As a director, or if you're the quartet person choosing music for your quartet, you should take the time to sing through all 4 parts. You, not your section leader, you. Sing through all 4 parts. That's what you're going to be asking your singers to do. If you haven't done it, you know, they have a legitimate gripe when the baritones say, how am I supposed to get from that note to that note? And you say, I don't know.
Well, I was going to say that each part itself has got to be singable.
Each part needs to be singable. And of course, that's a relative term. It's an adjective that singable by whom. It needs to be singable by your ensemble. Now, we may have different degrees. One of the things that we do is we may want to choose music that pushes a little bit. You want to do that. You want to challenge them a little, but not too much. If you challenge them too much, it can be very disheartening. Because if you present them something that and you just end up after 3 months saying, I'm sorry, we can't do this. Yeah, and that's disheartening to your members. That can be avoided by a wise choice, wise selection process, and it's usually by the director. So, you know, one extreme is to always giving them music that's too easy and trite. You don't want to do that either. You want to challenge them. And here's where your skills as a director really come into play. You want to challenge them a little, but not too much. In my chorus, I mean, we take baby steps. Now, they're at a very high level, but it hasn't always been that way. And we've certainly encountered a thing where we threw music at them that they could not do, never did do very well. That song ran its cycle, and we look back and say, you know, they just weren't ready for that yet. So, you know, but on the other hand, just as an example, when we got ready for our last contest thing for a year ago, our leads had developed a marvelous head voice, and they were showing that they were able to sing up into the upper ranges with great skill and great unity, and also without getting thin up there. And so I found this song that had this basically an F, but the lead goes to scale tone 3 above it. So the leads are actually soaring up to A. Now, 10 years ago, would I have done that? No way. But we kind of worked our way into it, and even then, the music team looked at that and said, and I just said, look, the leads have got to sing that A, and they've got to sing it twice. Are we going to be able to do that? Lead section leader, I think we're ready for that. And we did it. It must have worked because we won. But there's an example of a choice where we only went there because we worked our way into that step. We wouldn't foster that on most other courses. But there's something at the level of your course, whatever it is, and I'm sure we have various levels here. Don't just throw them something all the time that you know they can do. Challenge them a little bit, and it can be with range or it can be with rhythm. You know, good music, new music is where you learn skills. So they should be learning some new skills. Is it the skill of singing a swing tempo? You say, my course can't sing swing tempo. They're too square. They have what we call white man's disease in America. Maybe so, but there's some place to learn. So pick up, you know, Aaron Dale's Love Me or something like that, one of those slow swings, or an old St. Louis or something that's just got that slow swing to it. And let's begin teaching them that skill on a piece of music that's not so complicated that it overwhelms them. Somebody had a comment. Yes?
I was only going to say about, you know, in terms of the mix of repertoire, and
Yeah.
you're talking about how challenging
Yes.
to stretch the singers. I think making sure that you do have songs that they can learn quickly and achieve quickly gives them a real sense of achievement and feeling good about themselves. And if every song that you do it is continually stretching,
Yes.
it can be a bit demoralising. So
Yeah.
including quick wins, I call them.
That's right. So yeah, and that balance is the choice of you, the director. Certainly you give them something. You know, sometimes you find a piece of music, it's sweet, it's simple, you know they're going to love it, you know, sure, lay it on. The important thing, and you know, this will kind of integrate, everything integrates, you know, it's planning a rehearsal. You're going to have a rehearsal. And a rehearsal has to be both a learning experience and fun. And part of the fun is in learning music. Any kind of learning becomes discouraging if the person learning isn't fed the information or the skills at his or her level. So you go where they are and you try to advance them a little bit. You're not going to advance them a lot in one piece of music, otherwise it'll overwhelm. So, and then some of the time, it's all right, this piece of music does things that we already know how to do. Let's use that too, and but even those pieces of music, let's try to advance their skills on it, you know. As a director, in choosing music, even if it's stuff that you know they can handle perfectly well, there should be some learning process in it, other than just learning their notes. If all your singers are doing learning their notes, that's not good enough, all right? It's got to be, okay, they're going to be able to learn their notes, and then there's some musical skills here that we're going to be able to put in practice that are really going to make these songs come to life. Okay, so there's that hard process. Okay, we've talked about lots of suitability things here. Just a little bit more about range. Well, baritones are known for having weird voice leading, as we know.
Excuse me.
It's just, you know, that's because baritones are slightly more intelligent. So, and sometimes baritones like the challenge of a voice leading thing. If you're going to give it to somebody, maybe the baritones, because they pride themselves in their ability to just slide their note in there, you know, and make it work wherever it happens to be. I can remember one of our choices was we had a jump where the baritones just jumped up and sang the tenor note at one point. I mean, they had to be tenors, you know. It's just here down here and pow, there's a tenor note. So the baritones looked at it and they sort of gasped. They thought, what are you asking us to do here? But they sang it and it sounded great.
What was it, just out of interest?
It was when we sang "I Have Dreamed," and it's in my dreams right there, a big subclimactic Well, baritones go up and sing an A above, yeah, and they just pop, and they're not even close to an A. They go from like a C to an A. And so they looked at it in a double take, and then they sang it, and it was easy.
What did the tenor say?
Tenor sang a C.
Salt. All right.
But tenors on a C, that's their cranking range. They don't mind that. So yeah, again, it's this, what are your sections ready for? Maybe you feel like your baritone section is the strongest section in terms of musical skills. A lot of courses that's true, because that's where you put, some guy or gal that comes in and, don't read music, just, you tend to throw them in the lead section or sometimes the bass. And so a lot of times your most skillful musicians are baritones or tenors. So okay, give those people some good musical meat that they can have fun with and improve their skills. Okay, other things about suitability. Any other aspects of that? Certainly level of difficulty. All right, that's the main thing, and that's where you have to make the choice. Giving them a little bit of a challenge, but not too much of a challenge.
I was thinking about a song, if you've got a chorus of reasonably elderly gentlemen, you may not want to be singing songs about being sweet 16.
Okay. Yes. Suitability. Yes. Age. Yeah. Let's say the personality, age/personality. I remember, when you judge contests, you see just about everything in 1 second. I remember, this song called, what is it? Love is easier. It's called The Second Time Around. What's it? Love is. So these 4 kids, and the oldest one was probably 15, came out and saying love is better the second time around. Roughly, okay. Not so believable. But yeah, sometimes you see old guys and they're singing a song that just somehow has youth all over it, or vice versa. So there's a certain amount of that. Now, if you have various ages of people in your chorus, I think your selection can be not so constrained by that. I mean, we sing a lot of youthful music, and we've got some guys in their 70s up there, and they just get into the groove of it. But yeah, and also, so now let's use this to lead into, somebody talked about early on when we were making our long list, many of which we've talked about, by the way. Who has to like the song? The chorus has to like it. You, the director, better like it. I think you don't want to direct something you just don't like. You'll never get into it, and you'll never be effective. Or maybe you have an assistant director, and that person likes the song. Give it to them. But the director needs to like it. The chorus certainly needs to like it. Now you kind of know your people, and they may not know the song you're introducing, but you know them. And you sort of have a feel, oh, they're going to love this thing. And if you have that gut feeling that, oh, these singers are absolutely going to love this piece of music, then they probably will. And part of it is incumbent on you to present the music in such a way that they get excited about it. Now, how can they be presented in a way that they get excited about it? Well, the best thing, some people can look at music and see how it's going to go or envision how it's going to go, but for the most part, your singers can't do that. So they need to hear it. So you may be singing something that a particular performer has done, so you might play them a cut off a platinum CD or something, and they may get excited about it from hearing it. Or they may have already heard it and be excited about it. Or you might get the full mix of a teach track, the learning file. So somehow, it's really good if they can have the experience of hearing something and then getting excited about it. And then once you play them that, give them a little time to learn it, and if they're excited about it, you'd be surprised how much quicker they learn. In my chorus, we have this tradition where we sing a big Christmas show every year, and it's usually about the 10th, there's a couple weeks before Christmas. And then we take the rest of December off, and we meet first week of January. And almost always, we play for them at one of the rehearsals on site at the venue of the Christmas show. We've got, in between shows. We've got an afternoon show and an evening show. We sit them down on the risers in between shows, and over the house, we play a full mix or a recording by somebody of the next song that we wrote. And we do that when we know they're going to love it. And then they get excited about it, and we say, okay, the learning files are on the website. Have it learned when you show up in January. And I don't know how many years we've done that, and every year when they show up in January, we blow the pitch pipe and we sing that thing all the way through. And end in the right key. Just because they've gotten excited about it, it gives them something to do when they're not singing in the chorus and they're starting to get hungry. It gets them back at the rehearsal because they're anxious to sing this thing, and they just can't wait. Blow the pitch pipe, let's sing it. Most of the singers are off the music already. If you can somehow motivate them to be excited about the music by virtue of they've heard it and they like it, that's going to contribute a lot to the learning process. So yeah, the learning process is another consideration in all of this. When you're thinking about choosing the music, there should be a consideration to how are we going to learn. Is there a learning file available? Or are you going to teach it to all 4 of your section leaders so that they can sing it for them? Somehow the music needs to be presented to them so they hear how it goes. It's very laborious to work on something on blind faith. You're working on a piece of music and you have no idea how it's going to how the finished product is going to sound. That's not so interesting to people. Once they've heard the finished product, they have a rough idea. Okay, I hear it. I know where we're going with this. Their motivation increases exponentially. So think about the learning process, and that might influence your choice. Because if there's no learning file, nothing available, you don't have 4 section leaders that can learn this thing and present it, maybe you should choose another song that's like that one, but for which their learning materials are available. And I'm a very big advocate of that because a huge part of the progress of the chorus depends on the effectiveness of that learning process. We spend most of our time working on our music. If that process is satisfying, you've got a great chorus rehearsal. If that part of the process is boring, laborious, or discouraging, that's every incentive for a person not to come back to rehearsal next week. Or to say, I'm too tired. I've had a hard day at work. I don't think I'm going to rehearsal tonight. I'm just going to be beating that song to death. So process is so, so important. Okay. What have we missed in terms of suitability? Anybody want to discuss anything further? You got your range, you got the personality of the chorus, what they're going to like. Obviously, you're choosing music so that you think that the audience is going to like it, fits into your repertoire needs. Okay? A certain number of songs that you're going to have choreography to. All right? Some that you don't. You've got some novelty, some variety. You're choosing stuff where you know how you're going to teach it because you've got some materials available. Somebody mentioned a arranger. Who mentioned a arranger? But you want to elaborate on that one, Caroline? I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Well, I won't mention any names, but
Thanks for not mentioning me.
oh no, you are somebody. Well, am I allowed to talk about you? Obviously, I've
Be gentle.
I'll be gentle. I've heard many of your arrangements and can't say I've ever heard one that I dislike. I've loved them all. Some of them sound fantastic. Ambassador's Carniac Creed you mentioned, which I loved so much and listened to on YouTube. Ambassador singing so many times, and I fell in love with it and thought, got to do it, even though I had it looked at and was told this is challenging and it's too widespread, it's too low for the basses and it's high for the tenors and etc. Anyway, we did it.
And nobody died.
No, and it was good learning experience. But so I would think carefully about using arrangements in the sense that I know that they are, if they're written for ambassadors, or vocal spectrum, they're likely to be of a certain level of difficulty.
Right.
And so I would check with you. But there are other ranges whose music we've bought, and this was in years gone by, where they've been very uninteresting,
Okay.
and therefore I would think twice about buying one off the pen.
So is that because you've maybe been inspired by the song and the title and you feel that will sound good, we like
Yes,
the sound
yeah,
of that song,
absolutely,
and then you've gone
yes.
and bought the music, and then you start learning it, and actually you haven't heard it.
It's very repetitive, or you know, it's really hard to
Right.
make it.
So getting the
And you know, arrangers, like I write for certain groups, I've always written for somebody. I've never written an arrangement ever to whom it may concern. So it depends on the level of that group. So yeah, stuff for the ambassadors, but then other stuff might be much more accessible. I think the same is true with other arrangers too. Clay Hine does a lot of stuff for, he did a lot of stuff for Max Q, for example. So a lot of those things are pretty challenging. He's got some other stuff that's not so much.
I think it touches on a point you made earlier where the chorus has got to hear the music and the lights, right? And the final chorus will come along. Well, we've heard Brother Spectrum sing this, it's fantastic, we've got to sing this. And people will hear songs and arrangements that are outside the capability. Because they can get enthusiastic about something which is outside their range.
Exactly.
As there is. So being able to hear other arrangements is always easy.
Doesn't the availability of the review copy help out in this area?
Certainly, you might want to get a preview copy, and anything published by my society, you can get a preview copy, and I think the same is true with your organization as well. A lot of times a ranger, if the song is PD but owned by the ranger will share a copy just to look at it. And there's where you can do that business we talked about, and look at the range. Maybe you, as a director, know it because you've heard somebody do it. Listen to the recording and look at it, and just take a careful look at it. Yeah.
Sometimes, an awful lot of music, the arrangements listed, don't have a soundtrack.
Yes.
And for me, if I just look at a piece of music, I can't tell if the chord progression is beautiful. I can't tell. And so I need to be able to hear it. Ideally, I want to be able to hear either a fantastic teach track of all parts,
Right.
or a performance. And that's not always available, and therefore it's really hard sometimes to choose music.
Yeah, I mean, we could, I don't know. I mean, I could show you an examples of mine that's kind of middle range, for example, and maybe it would be helpful to look at something. All right, hang on here. Let me pull something up, maybe, and let's see what I've got. This maybe I'll choose an arrangement, one of the ones I'm going to use in the analyzing arrangements. Let's see. Getting there, getting there. Okay. Okay, well, I'm not finding anyone that I was going to do, you know, probably 20 years ago, I wrote an arrangement, Love Me and the World Is Mine. It was sung by Joker's Wild. Now, they won an international champion, but that's really what I would consider a moderate level arrangement. So just, let me go ahead and pull up the women's version, which is the one I seem to be finding here. Now the question is, all right. Now, so just scroll there. Now, guys, if you want to do some transposing in the mind's eye, just think of that A flat in the lead, pull it up to the E flat line, and just move up everything accordingly. So that A flat right there in the lead in the women's range translates to E flat. You just take a look at, you know, just without even listening, you can kind of look at those first two lines and see, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much in everybody's cranking range there. The leads need to be able to have that A flat. That's not so high for females, like a man singing an E flat, you know, so it's right in there. Now, let me scroll on down here, figure out how to do this. This is off of my Dropbox. It's really not here. So now, but watch what happens when you get down just a little further. It goes, yet the world will still be lonely. Now you see what happens there. The lead goes up to the C. All right, if that were in the mid's range, that lead floats to G. All right, and you notice it's the highest part, so the lead goes above the tenor there. Still, the basses aren't low. That's not a low bass. So the lead needs to sing that high paginatura kind of a note. So that, if you look at that, you'll see everything else is in range except that. Everything's good. Look, you can just look at it. See, everything's good. There's nothing out of range. It's normal, 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 normal. Super normal. I mean, that's just right where everything goes. And the one thing that happens is that the tag, the lead posts an A flat. She's fine. Baritone better need to be able to sing that C. So it ends on the Do 1 1 3 5. It ends on 1 1 3 5. You can't sing it without doing that. If you try to voice it down, it'll be a big disappointment because it builds up to that. All right? It builds up to that. So maybe just take a moment. This is actually something that's had a movie bite for. So if you're in an advanced arranging seminar, this is the actual performance of that from 20 years ago.
It's Ohio and Shenango Valley, Pennsylvania, the 1994 International Champions, Joker's Wild. Hey, Pop, say Pop, that would seem so
All right. Hovering up towards the E flat quite a bit. There's the D, the leading tone. Okay? Now here's the tricky part. points where you're not sure they can do it, but they need to learn to do it, you might choose this arrangement because this is going to be the tool that teaches them to do that. Here it comes in. But everything else is in range, right? Nothing difficult about voice leading. Chords are solid, parts are doing what they're expected to do for the most part. This little section, first chorus, kind of reverts to the key of B flat. So now we're in B flat. That's the same key as every polecat song in the world. This is easy. You can concentrate on the music. There's no obstacles as far as they're being able to sing this middle part of the song. Right? I only know. quartet, of course. So what are you immediately drawn to? What are the range of the lead? Bass. Any bass can sing. Your most limited chorus bass can sing any note. No problem with the tenor. Baritone, okay, until that last. The baritone needs to sing that third. Or the baritone hit the post and the lead sing the third. See what I mean? But somebody's got to hit that G. So maybe you're at the point where your chorus has never tried anything where the leads have that range, but you think they could. That would be a good experiment if all other aspects of the song, you know they can nail it, but now we're wondering if our leads can do that, and we're going to teach them to do it. So that's a good point, you know, where, okay, there's one new lesson. The arrangement can't have 10 new lessons. If it's got 10 new lessons, you're outside of their level of difficulty. You're just going to, but if it's one thing, and you say, okay, we can do all of this, and you say that, and sometimes you can offer it as a challenge. This is an arrangement we can do. The one question mark, and the one thing we've got to do is leads. You've got to be able to float that G. You've got to be able to float that appoggiatura right there. And show them where it is. And you say, if we can do that, this piece of music is going to work. And there's nothing like something like that to inspire everybody to say, by God, we're going to be able to get this. I've watched good directors work, and one of the best things I ever saw was Jim Clancy directing the vocal majority, and he was talking to his lead section, and he was talking about some interpretive thing, I don't know. And he said, now guys, here's my vision of what needs to happen here. And he says, I'm not sure we can do this. He described what he wanted. Not sure we can do it, but I just want to hear you guys try. And so, of course, they did it, you know. That's the challenge. And the minute they feel like, oh, if this is up to me, I'm going to do this. So, you know, when you put little challenges, not big ones, but little challenges in front of your chorus, that says to them, oh, the director has confidence in me, because he or she thinks I'm going to be able to do this. And then if I can come through, and of course if they do, you tell them how well they did, of course. We all know that as directors. That's what keeps people coming back for more and for more and for more. And if your leads can do that, sometime down the line you might ask for a piece of music where the leads have to float quite a number of head tone voices, notes. Or you could be working on the other end. You could be working on the bass hitting a low E flat or something like that. You know, if you're trying to develop something, choose a piece of music that puts you right on the threshold of where you are, and then let's see if we can get you onto that level. Okay, I think that I am out of time. I don't know if I proportioned this correctly. I hope this was helpful. I appreciate all of your participation in this, and you made it